Splatter movies are films that exist for the purpose of highlighting very creative methods of killing off a young teen cast.
Just the unfettered release of innards. That can be so over the top that it's fun.
The splatter film has always been with us. This is what people wanted to see.
G-O-R-E.
This film is very much like that. Kind of like a roller coaster. You know it's going to freak you out, but you get on it anyways.
The nature of the movie, you want to see more, and you want it to be more graphic and more shocking.
The marriage between makeup effects and visual effects is creating a seamless effect.
The audience knows that death could manifest itself in any way, so they're looking to see how we're going to kill him. Hopefully we've taken it to another level.
From 1897 to 1968, a theater was established in Paris called the Theater of Grand Guignol, a place where aristocrats and common folk could both see in vignette form a series of appalling, violent acts done as entertainment. A typical kind of night at the Grand Guignol, an eye would be scooped out and thrown toward the audience, or a leg would just be hacked off. The blood, which of course drenched this theater, would be so realistic that people frequently, women and men, would literally faint. They went for more and more gore, and the more gore they went for, the more the audiences ate it up.
This is France having lived through the revolution. This was a way for them to act out against figures of power, decapitated and disemboweled and cut to pieces. And it was, I think, a necessary thing for them.
Grand Guignol was letting people enjoy vicariously what the ancient Romans enjoyed in person. People wanted to see these people die in front of them, that bloodlust, which lurks in the human psyche. Grand Guignol was certainly the early ancestor of us all.
One of the early schools of horror was expressionist horror, where it was far more suggestive with shadows and lighting. You had things like Nosferatu. Even with the Universal monsters, the kills were far more suggested. You would go to shadows on the walls. If they'd had that sort of extreme gore right off the bat, it really would have been, I think, too much for an audience to take.
These films come in cycles. It was just a matter of time when we would go a little further. In 1957, Hammer Films of England took the old Universal horror films that were all black and white, updated them, gave them sex, gave them color, and gave them overt violence.
Now, if you've got vivid color, why not throw some red in there and see how it looks?
Psycho from 1960 was black and white, the Hitchcock movie. His gore took place in a shower. People said, oh my goodness, how could they do that? So yes, I would certainly accept Psycho as a film that suggested what was to come later. But it wasn't like Blood Feast where the tongue gets pulled out.
Herschel Gordon Lewis is, I think, the consummate exploitation filmmaker. Very aware of the need to sell a ticket in order to justify making the next film.
In 1960, Lewis started working with David Friedman, who was an ex-carnival barker. Carnivals of the 1920s and 30s that used to shock Midwestern towns.
What I learned from Dave Friedman was a P.T. Barnum approach of fearlessness to shoot things that without Dave I might never have had the courage to shoot. At the time, there was censorship against nudity. There was no censorship against gore because it didn't exist. Who would ever dream that someone would shoot a picture like this with blood gushing? Blood Feast was the first. We had department store mannequins, which we would stuff with glop. It made people sick. The key scene in Blood Feast, he rips the tongue out of a girl's mouth. He pulls out the tongue and all the glop comes out. That scene staggered people. Yes, the effects by today's standard, using department store mannequins and chicken skin, were laughable. But the picture itself was hard and brilliant.
With Blood Feast, he really tapped into an unconscious response in his audience, which was, show me something that I'm not supposed to see. The violence was there, the blood was there, and it made a fortune.
I don't deny and I don't cringe anymore about being called the godfather of gore. I wear that mantle with some degree of pride. People say, oh, you're the guy who started it all. How could anybody be unhappy with that?
When guys like Herschel Gordon Lewis began to create the outer envelope of exploitation, other filmmakers start to get into the business, and very quickly things escalated.
By 1968, George Romero did Night of the Living Dead. The ghouls are very realistic, and because it's black and white, you just can't quite make out what they're eating, but it sure looks disgusting.
There's no denying the impact of The Exorcist the first time on an audience, and seeing the little girl's head spin around. It was shocking because it was done at such a high level of realism. When you would do the biggest, bloodiest versions, those would be the ones that the crowds would go to. You could see how the mainstream was beginning to embrace these things. The Omen very much followed the formula of incredibly creative and innovative kills, slicing off of David Warner's head.
A lot of the splatter films became body count movies.
And suddenly, there it was, and no looking away from it, no flinching. Really started to see in the early to mid-90s the transition into using digital effects. In Jurassic Park, part of the shock of that film was seeing a guy torn in half for the first time.
The effects got better and better.
We are in the third generation of gore, in which everything is possible.
The first Final Destination was very clever in the way it took the genre of the teen body count movie. Instead of a man in a hockey mask, you have something that none of us really have a handle on. It's the ultimate stalker, death.
There's a moment involving a train, really startling. It is one of the great shock effects from that film.
And if you want to waste your life beating the shit out of Alex every time you see him, then you can just drop fucking dead.
Maybe the greatest death in any film of all time. I just can't say enough good things about the bus death in the first movie.
I mean, I took my DVD player and played it frame by frame, and I didn't see the transition to dummy to the real person. I thought it was great.
After the success of the first Final Destination, we sat down and tried to figure out what we could possibly do to continue the franchise. We knew at its core the sequences, the death sequences, were really what people were going to see. The writers, who were twisted and sick beyond hope and reason, were able to completely go bananas and come up with the most bizarre and yet completely interconnected ways that the characters are killed.
7 crazy deaths. Totally intricate with the Rube Goldberg puzzle-like mentality that would even mislead the viewer into thinking that we're going to see a death go one way and then it would totally go the other way.
We tried to have some situations in this movie where there's things that you feel comfortable with every day, kind of turn the tables on that stuff and have that stuff be things that now you're uncomfortable with.
We do it in broad daylight. There's none of this mood that nighttime or darkness creates. No, we do it in broad daylight in everyday experiences. It sounds kind of grotesque, but it's fun.
Coming up with how you kill people is sort of a macabre thing to do. Just the mind that would think about, well, how can we make this work and how do we do this? When it came time to find a director for this project, David Ellis's name came forward because of his experience doing pretty much every action scene in the last 15 years that you can recall. The SUV kidnapping scene from Clear and Present Danger, or the Quidditch match from Harry Potter.
As a second unit director, directing all the big second units that I've been fortunate to be involved in, you understand action, you understand how to execute it.
Originally, we had conceived of about 86 visual effects shots, And by the end, I just did a tally just very recently. We had 189.
I always start with a storyboard, which everybody's approved and really comes out directly out of David's head. If he has his ultimate wish, this is the way he would like a shot to be covered. No matter how technically difficult it may be, that's what I try to give him. It all comes down to some really basic concepts. Shoot as much as you can practical, or get the actors on a green screen stage, or shoot as many pieces as you can practically, and then go into the computer and start mimicking reality.
Basically, this movie's about killing people for us. How are we going to make the audience think this was exactly real?
As much as the first movie had a plane crash, we had to have a commensurate opening sequence. What other way than the car crash? Every time you get in a car, you never know what's going to happen. You have so little control. The sequence itself took 11 days to shoot. We had about 4.5 miles of highway that was ours. We could do whatever we wanted with it.
It's big. It's very big. There's 4 or 5 major car wrecks in a span of probably a few minutes on film.
It was all action every day. A lot of excitement and buzz. The physical effect had to work out with the stunt guy doing the right thing, with the right timing of the explosion.
You know, everybody's, oh, it's so planned. Well, a lot of it's by the seat of your pants, too. So don't anybody take it lightly. This is serious, so just back up. You know, that's why it's called stunts.
When the red SUV is doing its really horrifying flips, there is a live person who is driving that. We had dummies for the other people so that their arms and heads and hair could be flipping all over the place. It's a pretty scary undertaking.
Of all the sequences in the film, the logs were an element that we did not see. The logs were something that we created.
We did a test to first drop the logs, just to see what the hell dropping, 4,000-pound logs would look like. It's scary, but they kind of fall off, and then they go sliding off the road. The logs don't bounce and drop the way that we needed them to dramatically set up the rest of the sequence. So we knew that they had to be digitally created logs.
The first shot is what we call the hero shot. This is the point where the action starts. And this is it right here. Pretty much everything you see aside from the truck and the road, everything else is CG, the chain falling, and all these particles and all the reflections. We probably have 20-25 layers in one shot like that easily.
Once we got into the log sequence, I started feeling very confident. Then we started doing more and more difficult things just because we could.
When the log goes through the police car and takes off poor Thomas's head, and it goes out the back, it was done sort of in a way that was practical, and there was a dummy in there.
But the dummy was too visible, so we had to replace with the real actor's face that we took from another shot, and the mouth was taken from another shot.
And then we also grabbed one frame of the static log that was part of the original plate. We were able to warp it so that it had a rotation and had it make contact with the windshield exactly when the original static log hit the windshield, so the glass would smash. We just kept doing little things that you'll never know.
Most of the CG during the opening crash is wire removal. When the young guy is being dragged and the bike is following him, they were all tied onto a wire. We just digitally erased the wire. But that still is a real guy going, ah!
There's a section where the tractor trailer comes through a wall of fire, jackknifed. There was no truck jackknife. That was just a truck driving through a wall of fire, which was about maybe a quarter or half the size it is now.
I wanted it to mask the fact that the truck was coming at us, so we enhanced our practical fire with CG fire.
We shot a miniature trailer with a black box cab so that black box would affect the miniature fire the way the real truck did. We added fire in the foreground, some fire burning on the ground here, extra debris, and here comes the truck from hell.
this shot, these two people are on green screen. There's roughly 6-7 layers of different elements in this shot. The truck was a separate element. The actual kid coming up here was a separate element because obviously that would be his last movie if it would be there. All the flame and explosions were actually come after the fact. So we colorized the whole environment to reflect the fire exploding.
They're still called dummies. They're a little more than just your average floppy dummy. We like to call them duplicates, actor duplicates. The many steps that are involved in building a duplicate of an actor are, first we get the actor in the shop. We go through a process of making molds of their head, their body, their hands, all the details that are required to be incorporated into the final version of them in synthetic form. Once we have the molds of the actor, we go through a process of creating an expression on each of the heads. It's usually the expression that the character will have just prior to the impact. It's just a surprise look or whatever's necessary. For Final Destination, I had the internal organs of a pig delivered to the shop, and it came in this embryonic sac that when we cut it open, we just all put our hands in there and documented the whole thing and just analyze whatever we can find in there. It was a great learning experience because we had that visual reference that we can just put that aside and then begin the process of sculpting each of the organs. If we don't think about those details, then we're going to have, again, the situation where we have a Benny Hill dummy or a classic Monty Python dummy. Add teeth, add details of eyebrows, punch little hairs into the eyelashes, then finally create the eyes. If the eyes don't look right, then nothing else is going to look right about the body. The life of the whole dummy is in one little ball the size of a grape that we pop into the head at the last minute, take it to set, and hopefully everybody's wowed by the experience. In the case of Evan, we called that particular gag Evan versus the ladder. It was quite disgusting. Within the skull, we had a condom that was tightly filled with a mixture of raw ground beef, raw egg, lots of olive oil, and of course blood packs. And as soon as the ladder penetrates the skin, everything just explodes out of that eye socket.
Evan's death was pretty straightforward. What we did first was we did Evan slipping and falling and hitting the ground. And once we established him on the ground, then we did a pass with him on the ground with no ladder and a green screen in the background. Then we did a pass with a dummy head on the ground and actually doing the impact with the ladder going through the dummy's eye. Then what they did is they did a composite. They took just the part of the eye and where the impact of the fire escape going through the eye from the dummy and composited that onto the first pass with Evan's face. So we're using the dummy's eye in the actual impact of the fire escape, and then we're using the actor's face to react and do the reaction to getting hit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, have you met this kid? He is the sweetest little guy. He's just got this, he's always happy and everything's excellent. And that's this little friend of mine, James, who plays my son Tim. He's so happy to be here. Too bad he has to die.
I hate to blow it, but it's actually a dummy that gets crushed, not little Timmy. We tried to use him, but they didn't go for it.
Tim versus the glass, the manufacturing that we produced for the show were 3 duplicates of the actor. They were hollow shells. We had placed tightly wound, once again, condoms with all the trimmings. We're designing a body here and engineering it in a way so that when the glass hits it from the head, everything from the head down accordionizes and buckles in a very realistic fashion.
We had the actor on location looking up to a camera, and we established him in the spot, and then we took him out and had the dummy already looking up and used just the last few frames of the glass actually impacting the real dummy.
And interestingly, we did it once the first time, and it looked great, but there wasn't really enough blood. His little legs kind of stood up because they hadn't quite appropriately scored the dowels in his legs to snap. So when we did it again, we added little explosive charges, a little more goo inside. No CGI, no enhancement.
To further that believability, what we did was we increased the number of pigeons flying in the frame. And Timmy's running across the ground, pigeons that are all over the ground. There were a tenth of as many on the ground when he ran.
We shot green screen pigeons. We got the same pigeon handlers and their boxes and all the pigeons. We needed some to fly off the ground. We needed some to fly at camera, away from camera, zigzagging back across, then composited them.
We laid them into the frame wherever we needed them. You wouldn't just necessarily watch the kid being crushed. You'd be distracted at times by other movement in the frame.
We wanted to help also, when Nora, the mom, is crying and freaking out, it would be even more wrenching if the pigeons are flying right by her. So we're looking for ways to heighten the emotional impact of these deaths.
A man with hooks is gonna kill you.
What? What is it, Nora?
It was really neat to actually be able to, walk off the elevator and experience the sensation of, being trapped by death by braid kind of thing. I found it very strangely exhilarating, experiencing what could have been my demise.
Nora in the elevator.
Hey, come on, Mark.
Nora was pretty straightforward. We had a stunt girl in a harness that was being yanked up by the elevator. We did shots of the elevator's doors coming right at cameras. And then we took the actress, had her head in the elevator for all of her reactions to being trapped. Then we did one simple CG shot with the stunt girl with the green screen hood on as she just fell away from the elevator as her head is taken off.
First plate is the doors closing. Second plate is her falling out on her head. The third plate is we shot some blood squirts, squirted onto the door.
It was a green sock, so we got rid of all the green in the shot, which made her head effectively go away. And then we had to add, of course, for all the gore meisters, a little neck piece and then a spray of a little rooster tail of blood that flies out.
It sounds odd, but we did look at every scene and say to ourselves, well, it's cool and it's fun, but is it too much? In one construction, the elevator not only went up, but it came back down and went back up again and came back down, and we decided that's just too much, so we just made it continually go up until her head came off. It became too grotesque. It became too mean-spirited.
Personal favorite, absolutely the airbag. There's an airbag head kebab thing.
Could you be a little quieter with that thing, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll just put it on quiet mode.
That would be good.
That's my favorite death.
It seemed to be a little creepy, yeah, like a spear through the middle of my forehead.
Yeah, can I get a still? Go for it.
I'm really bored with this whole death thing, honestly.
We didn't actually impale Cat, but we used portions of Cat in the truck in forward movement before the bag exploded so that your eye is following the real Cat. And when the bag explodes, that's a dummy.
Cat was a dummy that we had produced. It was from the waist up of the actress. And as soon as the airbag inflates, the body flings back and the head goes straight back into the spike.
Then when we come back out, we've transitioned back to the real Cat so that she's with the prosthetic through her head.
It's pretty easy to figure out how you did that. You just stuck a pipe piece on the actress's head and she sits really still.
I'll just be happy to be able to watch it from this side, like, hey, look at that, it's funny. Okay.
Rory!
I have a really cool death, which is awesome. It's sliced in three. You see my guts. I wonder what they think my guts look like.
Every element of that was created. The exploding van, the fence posts were created, the flying wire over Thomas's head.
We had planned the fence posts and the barbed wire always to be CG. And that wasn't a problem. The issue was, okay, how are we going to slice Rory the best way? Dang, that's going to be hard.
We were considering lots of electronic ways of cutting Jonathan Cherry into pieces and then digitally breaking his body apart.
Joe all of a sudden stopped and said, wait a minute, what if we do this? And he sketched out a drawing with the side profile of a dummy with its legs to torso up to the neck area, and then he had Rory on a platform leaning in like this.
We came up with this concept of devising a partial puppet that the actor could actually wear. It was broken up into 3 individual segments. From the sternum up, that was the actor with his head, his shoulders, and his arms sticking out of this puppet. The actor is the main part of the whole gag. Just prior to closing up the body, once the actor was inside of it, we were able to open up a trapdoor and put all kinds of intestines inside and lung.
And then they had position and get stacked up there, and he's kind of leaning over bizarrely. 1, 2, 3, pull. And one guy pulls this way, he falls down that way.
In the post-production process, we can get rid of all the other people that were involved in that particular gag that are seamlessly blended away and removed.
There's a couple of things that made it work. We added more digital blood coming out, and Bill made a prosthetic hand with blood coming out, and we're able to include that as well. And all the pieces kind of came together and then fell apart.
Eugene and Clear in the hospital.
A complete manufacture. I mean, we of course you can't burn her face off.
Originally, a light was just going to come up on her face, but the nature of the movie, you want to see more, and you want it to be more graphic and more shocking. We ended up digitally searing all of her skin off and burning her hair, and then the fireball takes us out of the scene. The explosion, as big as it was, on film it didn't look huge, because it was a very long corridor and it kind of poops out because that's what fire does. So what we had to do was something that fire would never do, which is to create a fireball that travels all the way down 100 feet of corridor. So we built a big, long, black, miniature version of the hallway so that the only thing that we would see on the film is the fire, and shoot it at 150 frames, thereby slowing it down a whole lot, thereby making it seem much bigger than it really is. And then we had to have Clear's body inside that fireball.
A full cast of Clear. We had that on cables to ratchet it back like she's being blown by the explosions. And then we enhanced those shots later with visual effects.
We put a 3D rack in there, and that tumbles down and goes right over our heroes' heads. And then the body lands right in front of them, charred, and the rack lands behind them.
Luckily for me, I don't get to see myself die. When it's time to go, it's time to go. You have no control over that.
Brian, I think you better go check that barbecue.
The last death that we have in the movie, poor little Brian, that was a practical effect. It was a dummy with blood and guts and all that kind of stuff, and a fake barbecue that we built, and we just blew the shit out of it. Then we did the composite for the foreground, which was everyone's reaction with big air mortars blowing wind at them so their hair would blow and everything as they turn away from the explosion. For the final piece, we had Bill make a little arm that we put A and B smoke on, which is these 2 little liquids. Once you put them together, they smoke. It looks like smoke. So that's the desk of FD2. It's amazing what they can do. I mean, with prosthetics and with visual effects, it blows my mind.
When I shot Blood Feast, we had department store mannequins. That was then, and this is now.
If I think about it, I can't believe we really did it.
Just wham.
I think the future of this is endless.
Listen, I know you've already gone over this with Detective Subi, but would you mind telling me what happened?
It was like I was there. I remember everything. The sound of the crash, the smells, the look on Sheena's face.
Do you remember what triggered it all?
The log truck. Everybody, I guess. Everyone was driving like maniacs. I don't know, I just had a feeling that something bad was gonna happen even before it did.
You knew? Well, you just mean you had a hunch, right? A bad vibe, maybe.
No, it was more than that. I saw it. It was like a premonition. All the songs on the radio were about car crashes. Little kids banging toy cars together. A trucker was drinking and driving. She was on her cell phone, not paying attention. The exhaust from his car was choking me.
Hey, don't be knocking the Stang.
A school bus full of kids yelling pile up for no reason. I don't know, it felt just wrong, just like...
Just like what?
Look, I know this sounds crazy, but you guys all heard about Flight 180, right? The kid who got off the plane.
What? Go ahead.
My premonition was just like his.
This is Cherry.
Hello, Claire. I've been expecting you.
Oh my God.
That's Evan Lewis.
Come to pick my brain.
Just a simple question and we'll leave you alone with your new friend.
Yet still.
Look, we drove a long way to get here, so if you happen to know how to stop death, it'd be really great if you told us.
For what purpose? You seek a back way out of a room with but one door. You can't cheat death. There are no escapes.
Bullshit. You told me death has a distinct design. But Alex and I cheated death not once, but dozens of times. The design is flawed. It can be beaten.
Such fire in you now. People are always most alive just before they die, don't you think?
Please. If you know of anything that could help us, what harm could it do?
Solus novus animus, licita vinso mortis. Only new life can defeat death.
What the hell does that mean?
Some say that there's a balance to everything. An equilibrium that is the connective tissue to the universe. For every life, there is a death. For every death, there is a life. But the introduction of life that was not meant to be, a soul forbidden to roam the earth, that could invalidate the list, force death to start anew.
Is that why death is moving backwards this time?
To figure that out, you have to follow the signs. Kimberly. But be warned. To disrupt the grand design is to unravel the tapestry of the universe. And when you pull those threads apart, you might find yourself hanging from them.
How did you know my name?
Sorry. Time's up. What?
I'm Officer Burke. I'm looking for an Isabella Hudson.
Shut up!
You Marcus Hudson?
Maybe. What's this about?
May we come in?
No. What's this about?
It's about your wife, Isabella. Now, is she here?
No. I know, I'm kind of busy right now, so if you excuse me.
This is probably nothing, but I'm gonna need to take a look around.
I don't think so. You'll need a warrant. I know, I'm a lawyer.
Where's Isabella? Did you finally kill her, you fucking wife, Peter?
We can do this here, or we can do this at the station. It doesn't make any difference to me.
Fuck it. We had a fight. She left me.
What was the fight about?
Take a guess.
Does she have a cell phone?
No.
Any way we can contact her?
She wasn't giving, I wasn't asking.
Marcus, come on. Forget about him. Let's just get to the meeting.
Hey! And tell her that kid ain't even mine.
Well, we can only hope.
Hey, Norman. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, look, this is for you. I'm really sorry about your son.
Shit. All right, just keep going. I wouldn't know how to explain any of this anyway.
Speed up.
Oh, fuck 'em. No offense.
A nice try, motherfucker!
Nice. I'm officially on the lam.
A bizarre accident has left 2 people dead. One of them killed by a safety device meant to protect us. Ironically, the woman was impaled through the head after her emergency airbag deployed. She was trapped in her vehicle after it crashed into a field near Greenwood Lake. Rescue workers had just managed to remove the door when suddenly the airbag went off and sent her head flying backward into a metal pipe, killing her instantly. The impact also triggered a deadly blast. One man was killed when a news van at the scene exploded. Police have speculated that one of the deaths may have
You need a pen?
been narcotics related.
Sure.
And urged
If you like, I'll bring crosswords for you, too.
Good advice, Joe, and also stay in school. Up next, Jody Sowers has the wedding.
Jeez. It's freezing in here.
Trevor, what are you doing? The Tenzels are still waiting for you in the children's ward.
Right. Gregory's birthday.
And Mrs. Dempsey in hydrotherapy can't feel her legs.
Blah, woman.
Welcome to the terror gauge. You are here to visit my office to witness an experiment on how cinematic horror can change your brain activity and peripheral responses.
Hi.
We are actually living in stress and stressful situations all the time. And I don't understand why people seek to have more. So just follow me here. This is going to be the test room. Make yourself comfortable because I'm going to try to make you uncomfortable. There are individuals who have an adrenaline rush. You start sweating and you have a knot in your throat and you feel very, very agitated. But some people like that. In order to make sure that you are not going to run away because this movie is scary, all right? I'm going to tie you down, okay?
All right.
All right? Now, can you move your hand? No, all right. That's good. All the functions in the body can be monitored with different electrodes. We have the central type of measure, which are coming from the brain, and those are the brain waves that are giving us information about the level of arousal.
Oh man, I'm styling now.
Now this is the area where the body and the mind are connected. It's called the sensory motor area, and also the place where the right and left brain are talking with each other, so we want to see how you are responding.
You're not reading my thoughts, right?
Well, we are going to read everything, all your thoughts and body reactions, of course. And I like you just to stick your finger in. So this is going to measure your heart rate. I will be using this thermistor to find out exactly what the temperature reaction will be. And now the last one is this group of electrodes that are going to go on your palm to verify your sweat gland activity. Each frequency is related to a certain level of arousal, from a wakeful state to sleepiness. I wish you to have fun.
I'm ready to go to the club.
Now, as soon as the police car came, the sweat gland activity went up, which was a nice, interesting response. Baseline for temperature is about 76 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not too bad, but it's a stressful temperature. Usually a normal relaxed temperature will be 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And the heart rate is all over the place and very high. If we look at the beats per minute here, it can go up above 90 beats per minute. Usually the heart rhythm should have a nice wave that is a regular wave. So the moment when anxiety comes about, you know, the heart jumps off the norm. That is the moment when we can see how his response in sweat gland activity went up the roof. The reaction in her case is mostly temperature and of course the heart creating some stress in her.
Oh.
And he actually reacted vocally too, if you observe.
Sorry I haven't called.
Now we go from the biofeedback to neurofeedback. The brain waves that person produces at a certain time. These two computers are looking at his brain activity. This one shows right and left, and this one looks at the top of the head. When a person is able to focus well, is going to have enough beta frequency between 12 and 18 or even higher frequencies. He has plenty of high beta frequency, and the usual high beta frequency is related to anxiety. Our mind is so complex that without seeing a movie, we can imagine things and we can encounter changes in our brain electrical activity or peripheral responses.
Bye. Little bastard. Shit.
He's in pain. He is in pain himself.
Oh my god.
But it is a paradoxical response. If we look at the temperature going up higher and the sweat gland activity higher too.
Oh my god.
Well, his reaction was horrific. He went to 488 over. That was an incredible reaction. Now again, the sweat gland activity is up. Like many of us, who does like to go to the dentist? That's a fear-causing moment. He started to have some muscle tension if we look at this screen here. Some more variability comes about, and that is related to more anxiety coming. And there you are. The high beta is quite impressive.
Those birds are pretty scary.
That was a nice swing of the sweat gland activity.
The pigeons!
What?
Hey, whoa!
Sweat gland activity again. 360 went out of the screen again. She is responding, but she is responding, as I said, mostly internally. The neuronal network is responding heavily on producing a lot of high beta. For sure, the high beta is muscle tension plus anxiety. Heartbeat is the next to react. So again, it's central, and then peripherally, we have a little bit of a blimp here to 92.25 of the sweat gland activity. But that's not any closer to whatever we have seen before in the case of Robin and Weston, who were overly reactive.
I'll be fine.
Yes, I can see here it's a great amount of tension.
Oh, shit.
That was a very great response that he had. And again, went above 600. It's still in the range of high 500s in micromoles. That is a reaction, all right?
Oh, shit.
And of course, you could even hear that reaction.
Thank you so much for inviting us. It's our pleasure.
So this is nice, it's quieting time, a little bit of quieting time, but something.
Oh, shit.
All right, he's out of the scale again. Going up and down over the 700 range, up to 900. Very much the same response as Weston had. All right, Robin, we are done with the test. Are you alive?
Yes, I am.
Robin has been very responsive. His sweat gland activity climbed up to the sky. The brain activity in case of Robin was the most controlled. The beta, high beta, was not as bad as in case of Rachel or case of Weston. Most of the frequencies were very quiet by the middle line. So he's probably an individual that can be very focused, very attentive. What was the most scary moment?
Probably the whole beginning, because there was a lot of deaths. But each one was pretty freaky.
All right, Rachel. How are you feeling?
All right.
If we look at the reaction that she had, traumatic stress or any kind of trauma that creates stress, can lead to an underlying anxiety.
Yeah, I definitely have physical anxiety symptoms.
Yes.
Yeah, I get really tense, like shoulders and neck and...
Well, let me tell you that we found that.
Really?
Yes. We have videotape, but in the same time store some information on the computer. And that shows a great deal of muscle tension. And muscle tension is expressed by the high frequencies of high beta. you know.
Okay.
So you are producing great amount of those. All right, this is it. How are you feeling? Are you alive?
Yeah.
Well, he mentioned the fact that he enjoys to go in that, and he actually responded with a higher arousal as the movie progressed. So each individual stressor that was kind of adding onto his reaction. Baseline heart rate in his case was very high. I did the evaluation previously and I found out that he had a 90 beats per minute to start with, almost 100. You've been like running, all right? He mentioned the fact that he enjoys to go in that direction, but in the same time, I think that would not be very healthy for him.
And a lot of those things are all things that it's like you feel like they're gonna happen sometimes, and so watching it is like very real life, and it's scary.
I think that we learn a great deal of how human body reacts to any kind of stressful information. And the observation was that the two boys that we, analyzed had responded much more excited, and the girl did not. You see, that's another difference between you and the boys. Both boys ended up with headaches.
This thing on my head really hurts. Ah, man, my forehead's killing.
We have a reward center. And the reward center in the brain is actually very much excited by neurotransmitters, as we all know, those chemicals that are, making us feel what we feel. We can enhance them in different modes. If we don't have enough of them, we are looking for means of doing it. And so that's why I see we are reward seekers or pleasure seekers.
I flatlined. I died in the dentist's chair 9 years ago. I saw my body, I left it, and this beautiful beam of light came to my encounter.
I looked at my mom and I felt how scared and panicky she was, and I looked at my dad and I could see them carrying my limp body out of the water, and they were working on it.
This young man saw a relative who he believed was alive, but he saw this relative during his near-death experience on the other side, only to find out later that the relative had died and he didn't know it.
The near-death phenomenon alone challenges humankind to redefine life as well as death.
The near-death experience is an experience that people have. It's usually associated with a cardiac arrest, but not necessarily so. Sometimes people will have experiences similar to NDEs when they think they're about to be killed, or for example, if they're falling from a great height. So you can't just tie them in with a particular physiological event. They can occur under a number of different circumstances, but classically cardiac arrest is the type of event which causes them the most, and they seem to occur in about 12% of cardiac arrests, possibly somewhat more than that. Figures vary, but that's a good estimate.
To go any further than that, to say, well, a person goes through a tunnel or sees a bright light, we run into little problems with that. But for the near-death experience itself, the phenomenon itself, it happens somehow during the venue of actual death. It is an otherworldly experience that convinces the individual or shows the individual or enables the individual to experience life on the other side of death.
If we're looking at how did this develop and what's happening over the last 3 or 4 decades, you actually can go back to the beginning of time. In the early religious literature, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it talks about these phenomena.
Where did we get our morals? Where did we get understanding of the human race? Did it indeed come from near-death experiencers? It could have. in his book, The Republic, Plato recorded the story of the soldier. That is the first recorded case we have. There'd been a great battle, and when people could finally get into the battle scene, Er's body was the only one that had not decayed. So they had him on the funeral pyre, and as the flames were licking up, he revived and got off the funeral pyre by himself, glowing, and began to talk about his experience on the other side of death, those 2 weeks. Where he was, what he saw, what he heard, what he was told.
When Raymond Moody wrote his book, Life After Life, in 1975, he coined the phrase near-death experience. Prior to that, we did not know what these experiences were. We didn't know how prevalent they were. People who had them had never heard of anyone else having had these experiences.
My first exposure to the phenomena of the near-death experience was in Vietnam in 1969. I was a brand new nurse, went to Vietnam, would have patients tell me about these experiences they had. I didn't know at the time what they were. Of course, we didn't have a real name for them. But I knew they were important and that they had been significant for these patients. They would come in, we'd see them, we'd patch them up, we'd send them out. So I didn't have the opportunity usually to talk to them for very long. But what some of them would say are things like, I remember the explosion. I remember the next thing I was doing was looking at the ground. But I wasn't in my body, I was outside of my body. And in one occasion I remember a young man saying, and I could see other spirits around of my buddies who had died during this same explosion. They would tell me things like that they were sent back, they didn't want to live, they wanted to go wherever they thought they were going, but that they were sent back and told that they had more to live, they had more to do. I basically just listened then and would put that someplace in my mind that I put it all together later on.
There's one particular case that's been documented and has been in the literature for near-death experiences for a while. And this was a young woman who had a saccular aneurysm, or swelling of a blood vessel at the base of the brain, that was inoperable, meaning that they could not operate on her and fix it without causing her death. There was an experimental procedure, however, where they would chill her body down by hooking her up to a heart-lung bypass machine with her core temperature to the point where she had a cardiac arrest and all her brain activity would cease. During this period of time, she watched what was going on in the operating room, describing the use of a bone saw that had been used in opening her skull to access her aneurysm. She also recalled events about how the artery in her leg was too small when they were trying to hook into it with the heart-lung machine. This was done when she was not only unconscious, but also clinically dead by all measures.
A near-death experience is not wishful thinking, it's not a dream, it's not oxygen deprivation. It is an intense impact of energy that carries with it many times imagery and sound and feeling. But what I'm seeing is that intensity, that punch, that bolt. Where is it coming from? What is it? I want to know that. And I want to know why and how it affects people to the extent it does.
The characteristic that really, I think, hits home for me or resonates with me is children and when they see departed loved ones. They talk about people who have already died. They've never been around their city block, but they will tell you that I met Uncle Jones. He was my fourth uncle on this side. He lived in Birmingham. He died in a fire, and he's buried at yada yada place. I mean, they can come back sometimes with very specific data. You typically don't have that kind of information in a dream.
We now have a phenomenon that says quite loudly, life isn't what we think it is. Death isn't what we think it is. The paranormal is normal. That there can indeed be all kinds of activity that stretches the imagination beyond what we used to think was credible.
I was at the edge of the water and I was putting pebbles in a bucket and I was really having a good time. And so when I started to walk forward. I lost my bucket, and when I went to retrieve it, my foot went into a hole and it sucked me under like a ledge. So I was breathing all this water into my lungs, and all of a sudden I popped out of my body, and I looked, and I was going up, and I could see blonde hair floating on top of water. And I wasn't afraid. I felt like I was home. Then I saw my grandmother. I didn't know what grandmother that was. I knew it was Grandma. She told me, Linda, if you go back, you'll learn many things. And then the scene opened up, and I could look down. I looked at my mom, and I felt how scared and panicky she was. And I looked at my dad, and I could see them carrying my limp body out of the water, and they were working on it. And then all of a sudden, my gaze went to my brother Bobby. And I said, oh, I have to go back. I have to go back for Bobby. And instantaneously, I was in my body.
So the out-of-body experience is a con component, finding yourself in that incredible light, meeting loved ones who've died and gone on before, or spirit beings, or light beings of some kind. It's also fairly common to reach that realm, which we call in research the realm of all-knowing, or that sense that all of the puzzle pieces in life are being filled in.
I was 7 years old. I was in vacation, it was July. I was running in a field full of flowers. And when I was just about to reach for the flowers, I felt an horrible pain on my left ankle. And I stood back for a second and I saw this snake. I lost consciousness. Everything was dark then, and I was in my grandmother's bed. 2 doctors were around me and thinking that, I would never make it. I went into a coma for 10 days. I saw my body, I left it, and this beautiful being of light came to my encounter. I was not in my body, I was floating. We came together, we reached one from the other. This was the most beautiful thing I ever seen. Not just the being of light, but what she brought along with her was this enormous love. She said, you are going to be fine, you're not going to die, don't be afraid. And then she went on and told me many, many different things, but she said mainly that I would be here to help people. This was my destiny.
When we're talking about the pleasant or heavenly experience, 15 to 18% of the people have this. These are the people who come back, usually the most infused, to make a difference in society.
I flatlined. I died in the dentist's chair 9 years ago. When I died, I was in the dentist's chair, then all of a sudden I found myself in this dark tunnel. And I realized, where am I? And looked down at myself, and I was just a body of light. I got pulled along with the rest of these souls, if you will, and then I found myself going through layers of white light that were curved like the softness of a cup. But each of these layers that went up and I was passing through was a different light. And all of a sudden, from out of the light comes this magnificent voice that said, you're safe, you're here with me. You do not have to return, you're safe with me.
We can't use the old arguments anymore. We can no longer say it's a hallucination. We can no longer say it's oxygen deprivation. We as a society are challenged to rethink what we call paranormal.
The Gallup poll that came out in the 80s said that there were 8 million experiencers in the United States, I believe, and that was a conservative estimate.
Of course, it's now more prevalent than it probably has been in the past because of medical advances.
When you are having an open heart surgery, for example, chances are that you may have a near-death experience, much more than you would 20 years ago.
Back in the 1960s, we invented emergency interventions which were capable of bringing people back from the brink of death. So we're resuscitating far more people who've been critically ill than we ever have in the history of the planet.
But out of all these people who go through it, not everyone reports it, no.
I just thought that everybody that had this experience was normal and it was okay. I told my husband, and he said, oh, it was just brain cells dying. So this most profound thing that has happened to me in my whole life, I didn't have anybody that was close to me that I could share that with.
And I never talk about it to anybody except my grandmother. And the first thing she said to me, she said, "Don't ever talk about this. They would put you away. Nobody is going to understand what happened to you."
You're talking about a lot of patients every day who have near-death experiences and will go home without ever having a support system and may go on for years without ever talking about it. And that's, of course, our key, to try to get people where they have people they can talk to and people that are knowledgeable enough to support them and not hurt them.
IANDS is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Their purpose is to help understand what it is, to help experiencers incorporate it into their life.
I remember 25 years ago when there were 20 of us in somebody's living room. We were sitting trying to write out clinical guidelines. How would we help people? And we've come a long way, and we aren't there yet. We haven't got the exposure. We have a fairly common phenomena, but not one that we've got the resources and what we need to help fix and provide a stable support system for experiencers.
When you come out of a near-death experience, there are after effects, which put usually the person in turmoil, very deep questioning, why?
You know, you can deny the experience, you can't deny the after effects. We're talking about changes in the digestive system, changes in brain structure, brain chemistry, brain function because of these experiences. Most of them report significant changes in their body as well as their attitudes in their mind after this experience.
It's a certain percentage of people with near-death experiences will go on to have increased psychic and healing ability.
They're able to access sounds and thoughts of other people. They have a range of awareness of their environment that just seems to have jumped out of all proportion. The energy of their body is suddenly popping light bulbs or turning them off when they walk by.
I know of one person who it was so frightening to her, she just shut down because she could tell when things were going to happen to people, and it was frightening to her. As she grew older and had a support system around her, she learned how she could use those in a positive way and help people.
Many of the people who had a near-death experience have turned to hospice work for obvious reason. We've become friends with this. We've been there. We understand it. We're not afraid of it.
Once you've had this, you're not afraid of dying, because you know you never die. And if you know you never die, you live your life differently.
A near-death experience is a household word. I think most people know what it is. You see jokes about it and seeing the light. And if you're really going to take care of people, you're going to find out about this phenomenon and try to get more information and support them.
The more near-death experiencers that come out and talk about it, then it demystifies it and it makes it not as scary.
If we accept a near-death experience as something that does in fact occur, especially with all the events associated with it, we may have to change our understanding and develop new theories about the relationship between consciousness, the mind, and the brain.
What if we're kidding ourselves by thinking that we're in control of our lives? What if there's another power? What if the secret of life is becoming who you really are? How differently would you live?